Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Welcome to our fifth event in our Equity in the Workplace series. I am Sarah Moore, Legal Counsel and Business Development at BenefitBump. And today is the day where some of you have accrued a special BenefitBump gift. Yay, congratulations. We'll be in touch to coordinate your gift and make sure that it gets over to you. For others of you, you only have another session or two to go, so keep up the good work. And as a reminder, after 5 sessions in attendance, we will mail you a special BenefitBump gift. So keep up the good work, everyone. And now I will get over to our topic today. Return to work from parental leave, I feel like is merging onto a 5-lane Texas highway where the speed limit is 85 miles an hour. In order to go from the 25-mile-an-hour access road to the 85-mile-an-hour highway, one thing is absolutely necessary: an on-ramp. Offering a supportive, resource-rich environment with a flexible return to work schedule is the key to retaining working parents and offering that on-ramp. So that's what BenefitBump and Mindful Return helped provide. Thank you for joining us today, Lori. We have Lori Michalik-Levin, founder of Mindful Return, here with us to discuss how to ease the transition and return to work after parental leave. Lori, thank you for walking us through some of the return to work pain points, possible solutions, and why it makes sense for an employer to help ease the transition back into the workplace. So with that, Lori, I will go ahead and turn it over to you.
Wonderful, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. Thanks to everybody for showing up today. And I'm grateful to BenefitBump for including Mindful Return in the series. I wanted to tell you just a couple of words about myself first and what got me interested in this whole return to work after baby thing. And really it was, as I like to say, sheer desperation that caused me to be interested in this. I have 2 boys who are 8 and 10 years old. And it was returning to work full-time after parental leave with both of them that got me, first of all, interested in how one navigates that personal and professional identity transition and what type of support could be available. I went back to work and it was as though like everything had not changed from the time that I had gone back, and everything was sort of just assumed to be the same. And for an employee, that's not actually the case. I'm a lawyer by training. I'm in private practice in half of my time, Mindful Return the other half, and of course, mom all of the time. I also wrote a book called Back to Work After Baby that you can find on Amazon. So I wanted to, and I live in Washington, D.C. I'm trying to think of like, what are the other relevant stats that I can tell you? My boys were home with us for 15 consecutive months during the pandemic. That was not pretty, but it's good to have them back now. So as Sarah mentioned, I love that analogy, Sarah, of the merging and the on-ramp. It's challenging going back to work. You're battling sleep deprivation, you're battling guilt, you're battling wondering whether, well, if I was gone, does that mean that they didn't miss me? Maybe I'm not needed whenever I come back. What is my career going to look like? What are my hours going to look like? How am I going to set these boundaries in a way that's helpful and meaningful to me and to my employer? And employees really struggle when they are not supported. I am a huge advocate for paid parental leave, and I believe that that's a really critical support that employers can provide, but it's not sufficient. It's wonderful, but not enough. So after that period of leave ends, how do parents feel supported as they transition back to work? In the BenefitBump survey that they did in 2021, they found that nearly half of all new moms say that they struggle with the return to work process or unattainable expectations upon return. And I think that at least in my experience, working with thousands of new parents over the past decade, that's definitely true, that at least half of the people are feeling stress about it. Now, what's the problem with employees struggling upon their return? Well, I think the problem is that the employees who don't feel supported throughout this transition process often leave. I like to tell employers and employees alike that the return to work after parental leave is a process, not an event. So you can't view it as like one day, everything's good. No, it's a couple months long reintegration. And when organizations don't provide support for parents through that several month long transition process, then they're more likely to lose the diverse talent pool of really amazing and talented new parent employees who they have. Ovia Health has a study that found that 34% of new moms in the United States leave their employer after having a baby. And I think that study actually pairs nicely with a BenefitBump survey that found that 27% of new moms switch employers and 9% leave the workforce. So you've got this whole almost 30% of the new parent population who they're going to find another employer that they hope will meet their new parent needs better. I co-host this podcast called Parents at Work, and we always ask our guests on the podcast, what was the number one thing that made a difference to you in returning and made your experience either positive or negative? And 99 times out of 100, people say, oh, my manager, and how my manager behaved. And so what I like to talk about is the fact that an employee should not have to win the quote unquote manager lottery to determine whether they have a positive or negative return to work experience after parental leave. And we find that particularly when companies have policies that aren't standardized or aren't universally applied, the return to work experience for employees can vary widely based on the manager's perceptions. Back in that BenefitBump survey that I referenced a minute ago, 34% of the new moms who left indicated it was because of poor manager support. So clearly there's a gap there that we can fill in supporting managers to support their new parent employees. So the good news is that there are a lot of things that employers can do to smooth this transition, to make it more flexible for employees. Some of these things are very low-hanging fruit and completely free and are really sort of a tone and attitude shift. And the very first thing that I recommend to everyone is to have leadership, have managers declare their support to new parents, to make sure that the message is communicated that we believe in you. We are going to help you transition through this process. We want you to come back. We know you're skilled and talented, and we know that you didn't lose those skills and talents just because you happen to have a child. I think written and consistently applied leave and return policies are really helpful. Providing parental leave templates for managers and their employers so that they have a document that they can use to outline the categories of things they need to cover, from timeline to work that needs to be transitioned, et cetera, can be a helpful tool to provide. Pairing new parents with mentors. The law firm where I currently work takes a mentor and mentee, an existing parent, as I call them, and pairs them with a new parent. And then HR goes and just puts calendar invites to remind the mentor to call the mentee every couple of months. So, it's a support you can provide to connect people. And then finally, celebrate the return. Don't let it go unnoticed that the person comes back. Have a note on their desk whenever they come back, welcoming them back, or schedule a Zoom lunch with people, just a way to make them feel like they're reintegrating and part of the team again. Let's go to the better category. So automatic phase-in and ramp-up options are becoming more and more popular. It's perhaps obvious, but maybe not, that the day an employee comes back, they're probably not going to be up to 100% full speed that first week. There's a natural evolution process often of taking on more work over the first, second, third month. So it may very well be that you offer an automatic opportunity to work 60% for the first couple of weeks, and then 80%, and then 100% at the same level of pay, knowing that they're going to be doing that ramp up anyway. Providing new parents with courses on how to navigate the return. This is obviously something that Mindful Return specializes in, but we find that when new parents have a structured, thoughtful process for returning, it takes a lot of the anxiety and a lot of the worry out, and they feel more prepared to come back after their leave is over. Creating and financially supporting parent networks and caregiver-focused employee resource groups is huge for new parents and can really help them feel supported. I convene a group called the Working Parent Group Network, which is leaders of working parent and caregiver groups all over the country. And we really collaborate to share ideas and not have to recreate the wheel every time. Supporting breastfeeding and pumping needs. Talking through with employees what they're going to need upon the return and where the spaces are and times of day that they can access those is really, really important. There are lots of folks who provide lactation support. I'm thinking of Medela and their New Moms Healthy Returns program. Any ways that you can support breastfeeding in the workplace. Providing backup care, Urban Sitter, Bright Horizons, there are any number of providers who provide this. And for me anyway, before the pandemic, I definitely was able to work on days I otherwise wouldn't have because someone from the backup care was able to come to my house and watch my children. This leads to my last point, communicate support options in a structured way. I love what BenefitBump is doing, for example, because a year and a half went by for me as an employee at my firm before I knew that we had backup childcare options. I talk to folks who say, oh, I didn't know that I was allowed to take the mindful return course. I guess there was something in my original packet, but I didn't know about it. And then they're struggling through the return and didn't know that there was a support option provided. So I think communicating your support options to your employees is really critical throughout the path of their leave and return. Okay, so over to the best practices. I go back to the manager lottery here and say that there are ways of communicating with and educating managers as to how they can best support employees through the return. So providing formal manager training, holding managers accountable as part of their metrics for the year for taking these trainings. I think that's absolutely gold standard. Fully paid gender neutral parental leave policies are definitely something that's very supportive of working parents. And I often get on a soapbox against the primary caregiver distinction within a parental leave policy. I think it often defaults to the woman, and I think how you measure and evaluate who is and isn't a primary caregiver is a little problematic. And in households like mine, my husband and I, we pass the primary caregiver hat back and forth on an hour-by-hour basis, and so the distinction isn't quite meaningful. Equitable paid leave across job functions, I think, is huge. We're all facing human struggles in giving birth to a baby and going back to work and need support during that. And then, the thing I always dreamt about was on-site childcare, where my child was just there and I could go and visit throughout the day. And I never had that, but it's definitely on my wish list. All right, so what is the business case for making these changes and implementing these supports? Well, helping new parents navigate their roles as new parents while they're coming back and navigating their roles as professionals is really a win-win for employers and employees. There is a wonderful neuroscientist at Yale named Dr. Ruth Feldman, who has been doing a bunch of research on the human brain around the time of parenting. And she writes that the year after, here, I'll just read the quote, the greatest potential for plasticity in the human adult brain, the entire time that you're an adult, is the year surrounding the birth of one's child. And that's true for moms, and that's true for engaged dads and other engaged caregivers. And I know a common friend of ours, Amy Henderson, has written a lot about this and talks about the leadership skills that parents gain that are directly applicable to our jobs. Empathy, prioritization, courage, all of these skills that we gain through parenthood are things we can bring to bear in our careers as well. Another point on the business case is that employees who feel supported by their employers stay. It's a retention issue, right? We did a study at Mindful Return of 1,000 people who had been through the Mindful Return program over a 5-year period and found that 85% were still with the same employer. That's dramatically different from the 34% who left on the earlier slide. And I think about 93% were still in the workforce in our study. And if you're retaining these employees and they're feeling engaged and they're feeling part of the community, you're going to have more productive employees. So providing support to parents who are returning to work both improves their productivity, improves the productivity of your workforce, and the Gallup data shows that companies with higher employee engagement are 21% more profitable. So I think the business case is really there for retaining these employees, making sure that they're being able to use those skills that they've gained through parenthood in their roles, and then helping them to become efficient and productive as they're returning to work. So I'm going to pause there. I think it's time for our Q&A, and I'll pass the baton back to you, Sarah.
Thanks. Yeah, I love your good, better, best slides, Lori, because there's so much good information in there for employers and consultants that are working with employers to think about sort of as they go through the hierarchy of next steps. And I particularly loved your first point of just communicating that the support, we're here for you, we're excited for you to come back, we want you to stay. I think that step one is so important. And so I love that you kind of shone some light on that. Just really thank you so much for joining us today and sharing some of the pain points, the good, better, best solutions, and the business case. Your retention percentages really speak for themselves, Lori. and how important it is to create a supportive return to work environment, and the key in that to better retention. So BenefitBump, working together with Mindful Return, ensures easy access, like you mentioned, Lori, to available resources as you need them, because that's really a key, is to know about those resources along the way when they're needed for you in that moment in time, to growing families, and including a smooth transition back from parental leave with Mindful Returns program. So please reach out if you have any questions, or if you'd like to learn more about how BenefitBump and Mindful Return working together can create a better experience for your working family. So our contact information is here. And I'd love to get over to our Q&A session. So Kate, thank you for asking for those questions. I think we've had a few in the chat. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, shall I stop the screen share at this point, Sarah?
You can move, Lori, to the next slide that just shows the Q&A, and then we can chat.
Okay, sounds good.
So yeah, we have had a few questions in the chat, and I love that there's a little bit of collaboration even going on within attendees today. So that's the beauty of Zoom, I guess. But one question we have is, what do you typically suggest is an adequate amount of paid leave in terms of number of weeks? And then this person added, my spouse was just offered a job. The parental leave policy is 80 hours, which is 2 weeks of full time.
Yeah, it's a really interesting and great question. And I don't know that there is universal consensus on the appropriate amount of leave after a baby. I would note that the United States is one of only, I believe, 2 or 3 developed countries in the entire world that doesn't have automatically provided paid leave. My personal opinion is that the 6 to 9 month mark is probably the ideal amount of time. I believe that everyone's experience is different. Some people want to hurry back right away. Others would prefer to be closer to a year. I think that there's a too short, and I think that there might be a too long in terms of how long leave is, because you can get really disconnected from an organization on the outer bound and disconnected from professional skills. And on the early side, I mean, I think a solid paid parental leave policy is 12 weeks. I think that's solid. I don't think that that's ideal. I think it's solid because of the developmental stages of the children. I mean, a lot of people don't know that there is a 3 to 4 month-ish sleep regression that happens in many, many children. And it sent me off the rails personally. And my children, my first baby he was sleeping fine-ish, for a baby. And then he started waking up every 90 minutes. Right around that 3 month period. Sarah's nodding as though she may have experienced something.
Right when you go back to work. Right. I lived that too.
That exact juncture is the time when babies stop sleeping. So to the extent, with my babies, I think I took 20 weeks with my first and 16 weeks with my second, but they were not fully paid. I actually had to save up in advance to be able to take that. I don't know, Sarah, if you want to weigh in at all, but
I agree with everything that you said, Lori. The solid being 12 weeks, I think that's absolutely true. But that is also hard because, again, the sleep regression, and if you're not getting sleep, right, you're just not functioning as well in your role, and so going above and beyond that, I think, would be even better. But having that solid 12 weeks, I think, is a good start. So 2 weeks, having the 80 hours, that's kind of a bummer. But something to build upon. So hopefully in the near future, they'll be looking to kind of add more weeks to that, because I think that would be great.
Yeah, when I went out on leave at the organization where I worked when I had my 2 babies, it was a 1 week paid parental leave policy. And I have to say that the parents generally felt that was almost an offensive policy, because how could you possibly expect anyone to be back after a week? So I know since then it's been changed and amended and they've increased the number of weeks, but I think it's something worth giving a lot of thought to.
So we have some additional questions that we received ahead of time. And the first one, I'm really interested in your response, Lori, but it is, when you have a diverse employee population with differing job positions, roles, locations, how do you structure and streamline a flexible return to work policy? Basically, everybody has different responsibilities. How do you figure out what fits across the board?
Yeah, Kate, I love that question too. And I want to start with the idea that we have so much more in common as new parents than we do that divides us. And one example of this is that when I started running this mindful return program for new parents to help them transition back, I had people who were not only in different industries and sectors, but in different countries. And some of them had like a year off, and some of them had 2 weeks off. And everyone had the same worries, anxieties, concerns, et cetera. And so it really reminded me of sort of the universality of the need when you're a new parent for support and flexibility in that transition. And so I would approach the conversation with an assumption that people need very similar things across job functions. How they play out in terms of the exact hours per day that someone works or where they need to show up, I think it might be a role-specific conversation. But I think if you start with a premise that everyone needs to be told that they're valued and that they're supported and that they're going to be helped through the transition back, and that everyone has the option to have a flexible return, I think that would help make supported return be a more universal function across an employer.
Yeah, I love that response, Lori. And I'm also thinking that goes back to your good, better, best slide about having a very structured process to transition out on leave. So you know who's going to take on what responsibilities. It seems like that would then translate very well into meeting the needs of all these different job roles.
Yeah, I mean, it drives me batty, quite frankly, that people feel like, certain job roles should only be quote unquote entitled to less leave because of their rank or whatever. I'm sorry, we're doing a human thing by having a child here. And I would love to see human levels of support provided to everyone.
Yeah. The next question I think could be read a couple different ways, but let's just see where it heads. What's the communication plan around flexible return to work options? So I don't know if that's once an employee is out on leave, what's the communication plan, or how are these flexible return to work options communicated to the employee? I think it could be all of those answers would be valuable.
Yeah, so the communication must start well in advance of leave. And I think a couple of things. One, a tool like a template can help guide you through the process of planning for leave. It can help you think through questions like, okay, if I go into labor in the office, what should the team do? Who should they call? When do I plan to come back-ish, knowing that might change? What might my phase back in look like? What big responsibilities do I need to transition? Who are the people who are going to need to be looped in? And I think that process continues throughout the leave and making sure that the employee is in touch throughout leave on some level, right? Just at least so that you know what place their head is in and when they're thinking of coming back. And then it needs to continue afterward. But then you raise the point of coordinating the information that the employee is receiving about their supports and benefits. And I think that's where a role like BenefitBump comes into play, right? To be able to say, okay, we have a structured plan for communicating to you what your supports are, and we're not just going to tell you once. Because new parents are, they're receiving a million pieces of information. Someone who's pregnant and is just trying to get through the anxieties of giving birth to a baby is probably not thinking too much about the return to work after leave and what they're going to be thinking about and feeling in those moments. And so I think it's really important to have an ongoing dialogue that meets the person and their needs at the stage that they are, and making sure that they're reminded of the services and supports that are provided along the way. So it's not just a once and done, oh, we told them once and wash our hands of it. So I think yes to communication and yes to ongoing and structured communication.
Yeah, I think I read the question that way as a care navigator who works directly with employees. And I hear so many employees tell me, like, I didn't know that I could ask for a phased return to work policy. I didn't know that was a choice. So just to have a way for that to be communicated to employees. I think we might have time for one more. What do you think, Sarah?
Yeah, let's do one more.
Okay, I'm jumping down to one that I personally want to hear. How would you create a community for new parents, and what should that experience look like?
Oh, I love that question. Just having that sense of me too, of other people are going through that same thing, so normalizes the process and really drives down the anxiety among new parents. And I guess I can speak from my own personal experience to two different types of community. One is through a program like Mindful Return, you sort of automatically get put into a cohort of other people who are returning to work at the same exact time you are. So there's an ongoing support both in the platform of Mindful Return, but then also in our ongoing alumni community that our alums stay in touch with other working parents throughout their career. And the other thing is that I am a huge fan, and I said this earlier, of working parent and working caregiver groups within organizations. I don't think it takes a heavy lift to get these off the ground. In fact, I started two myself. I'm sort of a serial founder of these groups. And really, it was a matter of asking HR, okay, can I start having monthly brown bag lunches, right, with other employees to talk about these issues? And ultimately, I think it's helpful if an organization provides some executive sponsors to the group and provides some funding to the leaders so that they can bring in outside speakers and that sort of thing. But really just the mere fact of being able to identify who are the other people in my workplace, with whom I can connect and feel like I am understood and getting some practical, tactical tips about how to navigate this can be really, really powerful. And it doesn't have to be a huge lift. It can really just be a designated time for parents to gather. I'd also note, sort of on the side on the productivity, that I've gotten business through the parent group. Like there was a dad who came who decided to send me some legal work because he showed up at the parent group at my office. And it's nice to be able to connect the dots and make people feel more connected on a professional level, in addition to talking about our babies and kids in school and all of that.
Networking happens in the strangest places.
I have a friend who likes to say the playground is the new golf course.
No, that's so true, Lori, and just creating that support. I love the reference to the tips and tricks, because sometimes it's a very tactical, how do I do this, or how should I be thinking about this in this situation? And there's others that have kind of come before you that can talk you through it. And then it makes, like you've talked about, something that's super stressful, can create anxiety. It really tamps that down. Helps you solve a problem that maybe you would have been spinning your wheels kind of behind the scenes on. So more productive too.
Exactly.
Yep. Well, this has been a great Q&A session, and I absolutely love the discussion and the pieces of information that you've walked us through. Lots to think about here. So I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us for this session. Thank you so much, Lori, for leading us through this topic. And I wanted to say we'll see you all next week. Next week, we're meeting at 10 a.m. Central, so not 11 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Central. And our event is with Mamava, where we're going to discuss how to pump up your mother's rooms. So like you talked about, Lori, what's in your mom's rooms and how can they access? Really excited to talk about that next week. So thank you so much, Lori, and thanks to everybody for joining. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.